Hey everybody, Dai Manuel here. Just had an amazing conversation with Matt and Leo on the HackCess Show, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of the insights on goal setting, vision setting, but really just how to get out of your own way and make shit happen. So peace out.
Hi and welcome to the HackCess Show. It's the place where you can find life hacks on how to become the best version of yourself and achieve your goals. We show you how to walk the talk from successful people. And today we have Dai Manuel here. Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Hey, thank you. Good to see you, Matt. Good to see you, Leo. It's a pleasure. I know we're all over the world, but isn't it great? Zoom brings us all together.
It's fucking awesome.
It is. It really is.
So can you just give us a quick overview of what you do for the viewers?
Yeah, sure. I've been in the health and wellness industries for 26 years. My entire adult life, and it even started before I was an adult, with my own personal battle with obesity as a teenager, and going through that transformation over a couple of years from the age of 15 to 17 really got me excited about helping others with changes. Just, change is always possible. It's just a matter of, do we get in our own way? Are we preventing ourselves from the change? And I realized I was the biggest culprit, the biggest block for myself at any time in life when I wanted to make big changes. It's always been my issues, slowing me down. So what do I do now? Like I do lots of things in the wellness space, but I work with people individually, but I also do a lot of group stuff, a lot of keynoting, published a book. I do all sorts of stuff, but the whole focus is just helping people get more out of life, and so I do a lot of support on people's businesses. My last business, I have 17 years, I exited out of, and when I exited out, we were doing about 8 figures a year there. And I learned a lot in that process, e-com as well as brick and mortar retail. In the fitness industry. And then I wanted to change. I wanted to be full-time dad. I also felt a desire to travel. So my family and I traveled for about 5 years, lived almost 3 years in Bali. And so here I am. I'm back in Vancouver now, so my kids can finish high school, and then we'll go traveling again. But I'm here to serve, my man. That's all.
That's a pretty cool lifestyle.
Yeah.
And like when you were like 17, were you like, that would be fun to do the same with other people, or you were just like into like you and getting better, maybe in your own journey first?
Well, Matt and Leo, you guys can probably relate to this. A lot of people that get into the coaching or the mentorship side of things, that just people that embrace that kind of modality, that desire to help others. It's nothing new, right? We often hear about the hero's journey. And when Campbell wrote about that back in his book, The Power of Myth, back in like the 70s, he was talking about all of us are on a journey. We're our own heroes in our stories. And on these journeys, we meet people that influence us, change our perspectives. It's parents, it's coaches, it's gurus, right? Like whatever, but it changes us just a little bit. So then when we encounter a big obstacle or a challenge, we see it differently, and we can usually get through it, or at least get through it in a way where we may be triumphant, but even if we're not triumphant, we learn from the experience. But a lot of us, in going through that big experience or that transformation, that change, we feel a deep desire to go back to our origins, go back to where we started, so we can now help others experience similar results or changes in their life by guiding them. Yeah. And so that's very true for me. And my very first taste of that was, at 17, all of a sudden my parents' friends, people that were 20 years my senior minimally or older, all of a sudden were coming around our house, sitting me down and wanting to talk to me. Like I thought you'd come to see my mom or my parents, like they're probably, my parents' friends are coming over to visit. And they were like, well, actually we're over here to talk to you, because they'd seen this big change that I had achieved. They saw how I had changed how I eat, changed how I think, changed how I show up. They just saw this radical change in 2 years. And all of a sudden people started to take note of what I had to say. That had never happened to me. You know what I mean? Like up to that period of my life, I was not used to people actually coming to me and actually asking me questions, but were interested in hearing what I had to say. And one more thing was they took what I said and then they applied it and they started to create similar results for themselves. And that got me really excited. I was like, wow, I can empower people to achieve similar results that I've achieved. And I feel really good for doing that. I feel fulfilled. And that was the first time in my life. And that's when I knew I'll be doing this for the rest of my life. Like in some capacity, I'll be doing this. So that's sort of how it all got started,
Well, that's amazing. I love the idea of just taking something and then turning that into like a goal, a dream, and going for it. And you spoke before of when you encounter an obstacle. Can I ask you, how do you decide when it's time to go through it, to persevere, or to let it go and to change directions?
Well, let's think about life, right? Like, this is it's a cliche question. I know, like, what's the meaning of life, right? And I think it's a funny question,
Yeah.
because to answer the question, you have to give it meaning. I mean, all of us, the meaning to life is whatever we believe it is. And we give it the meaning. And it's not something we usually seek outside of ourselves. It's actually something we usually discover within us, and we talk about words like purpose, right? And being purpose driven. And when I think about that, and purpose and fulfillment, joy, happiness, like these are all things that are very important to me in my life. I want to feel of value. I want to deliver value. I want to feel like I'm living a life on purpose. And when I started to look at things from that perspective and really ask myself, how can I best support people? How can I show up to just show them that if there is a change that they want to make, that they have the ability to make the change? Because a lot of us, we get so used to it, like, especially in the health side of things, a lot of us get used to just being unhealthy. That becomes our new normal. And if that's our normal, we forget what it was like to wake up in the morning after sleeping for 8 hours and actually feeling like we slept 8 hours, or having the aches and pains, or, that mid-afternoon snack that's often sugary or loaded with some caffeines or sugar sweetened beverages. Like, we have these certain patterns because we're looking to try to achieve something instantly, without dealing with the root cause, which is often our habits and the way we think. And so for myself, I've found that every time when I'm up against a big obstacle, I usually ask myself 3 questions. The first one is, can I do this? Because if you think about it, if you're at a period in time, so anybody that's listening to this, you can relate to this, just think about the biggest challenge that you're dealing with right now. And if that challenge, by dealing with it, and I'm not saying solving the problem, it's not usually a solve this, fix this kind of situation. It's just usually, I got to start doing things differently than I've been doing to create the results that I want. And if those results make you happier, make you feel more fulfilled, more joyful, then that's a good thing. Okay. It's a great thing. Unless you're a sociopath, and then we'll probably have a different conversation. But for the general human being, it's a good thing. So when you know that if I can change this thing that's holding me back, I know things will get better, then this is probably a good change to address. And so there's 3 questions to ask yourself. 1, can I do this? 2, if I do this, will it work? And then 3, is it worth it? And just to put this into perspective or context for you, like, let's just play on the analogy of somebody that wants to lose 40 pounds. All right, we'll just use that as an example. Can I lose 40 pounds? The person has to ask himself, I know I'm overweight. I know every time I look in the mirror, I don't know the person looking back at me. None of my clothes fit. I work with a lot of men, especially men that are 40 plus like myself. And, they don't even remember the last time they took their shirt off at a pool. The kind of guys that will go in the pool now wearing a t-shirt because they're embarrassed. They feel a lot of shame around their body, their physicality. And that's an awful place to be. It affects your confidence. It affects how you show up. It affects your relationships. I mean, especially dynamics with self-love, right? So you have to ask yourself, okay, well, can I do this? Can I lose 40 pounds? Well, the answer is pretty simple. It's usually a yes. Why? Because it's an education thing, right? It's like, well, okay, can I do this? Yeah, I can do this. I know I can do this. I've seen other people do it. So yeah. Okay, well, if I lose the 40 pounds or if I start to exercise, will this work? Because that's usually what involves most people. I have to change my nutrition. I have to change my routines. Will this work? Well, listen, man, like, you can't help but go on Instagram feeds and Facebook and pretty much every social platform. You'll see success stories of people that are living lifestyles that provide healthier results. So it's like, well, they can do it, I can do it. So if I do this, will it work? Well, yeah, it is a yes. So you get a yes and a yes. This is the tough one, guys. Okay, this is the big one. So people are listening. Take note of this question. Is it worth it? And this is a value position now, right? Like, and it's great when I'm working with organizations or teams or companies, like, I can say, is it worth it? And we can speak in general terms, but really when I'm talking to individuals, I want them to reframe it and say, am I worth it? Right? Because really big changes that happen in our lives, the ones that we've endured because the results were worth it, man, for us to say, am I worth it? Hell yeah, I am. Because when we truly believe that we're worth the work or the effort to make the change, man, nothing will stop us, but it's not an easy question to answer.
Yeah.
Right. So I do want to frame it up, but those are the three every time. Like when I gave up alcohol, 11 years ago, because I was abusing alcohol and it would lead to narcotic use, and I needed to make some big changes. And same questions. Can I do this? If I do this, will it actually work? Will I see my life get better? Am I worth it? And that was the one I struggled with. That's where I needed a third party. I needed some support. I needed a community. And that's important to recognize. We can't do it all on our own, So yeah, so that's it. Sorry, guys. I sort of went on a tirade there. Simple question, Leo, not such a simple answer, but
yeah.
That perfectly answered it. I really just ate up all the information you gave me, and specifically the thing about the 3 questions. I don't know, that really resonated with me. But about the first one, so can I do this? How can you estimate what you can do and what you can't do without having the experience of already being or having done something similar?
Well, this is super interesting. And I love that you bring this up, because sometimes we get so far removed from the result that we want. It feels like a destination that's like basically a destination we'll never get to. Right? Like it's like, oh gosh, why even bother? It's like, it's like someone saying, oh, I want to run a marathon. Meanwhile, in the last 12 months, maybe the most they've run is, across the street to get out of the rain. Like it maybe isn't quite a realistic goal. They could have the vision, but realistically, can you do a marathon? It's really hard to believe that if I'm someone that's 40 pounds overweight, never run in my life, and I wake up one day and I say, I want to run a marathon, and you ask yourself, can I do this? It's pretty hard to get 100% confident in yourself, So there is a little bit of building up the confidence and the belief in oneself. And the way that I find this easiest, or I shouldn't say easy, the simplest way to do it is look back in your life and think about any challenges that you've ever come up against. And I'm not talking about massive challenges. I'm talking about even just mini little things, right? Little obstacles that did push back on us, made things a little bit more challenging, yet we were successful in overcoming them. We were successful in creating a positive result based on what we wanted, because the pattern is there. You can repeat a pattern or a process. You've had success before, maybe not to this magnitude, but you have had success with change. And that's the biggest piece I want people to feel really good about, is that change is possible. Because it actually happens all the time. I mean, the Buddha talked about it 2,500 years ago. He says, yeah, this too shall pass. People are like, well, what's he talking about? They're like, well, anytime you're in a bad situation, don't worry, you'll get through it. It will pass. It'll be behind us. And I'm like, it's not just about the bad things. He was talking about the good things too, right? He was trying to bring the mindfulness, the awareness back to the present moment. And I get that, right? So it's not so much about what do I have to do next week to achieve this result. It's like, what can I start doing right now? And you just start in increments, small increments. It doesn't have to be everything all at once. And so as soon as you get that belief in yourself and you can remember what it was like to overcome something, to produce a result that was in alignment to you improving your life or your business, it's all connected anyways, then can I do this? There's that reassurance that, yeah, I can. I know I can change because I've done it before. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I always say, go back to like the last time you had a challenge. It might be a brand new challenge, but there's probably a period in time in life where you encountered another challenge that at the time when you were in it, probably felt like it was insurmountable, but then you got through it. And as soon as you get through it, your perspective changes entirely. Because when you're looking back on a challenge, it never looks as bad as it was when you were staring it in the face. Like it never is, right? Like at 17, when I was healthy and fit and living my new lifestyle after 2 years of just being consistent with how I ate and how I moved and how I thought, I produced this great result. But when I was going through it, especially in the first few months, it was hard. It was really hard. I was deconditioned. I was really obese. Everything was hard. But I trusted that by going through the steps, good things would start to happen. And within weeks, the first few weeks, I was seeing progress in areas where before starting, I couldn't even have thought about doing. Like riding a mountain bike for an hour without stopping. That was a foreign concept to me. But after about 3 weeks, I was able to do that. I could go out on a ride for an hour and I wouldn't have to stop. Win. It's a win, like, and that's what I want people to really understand, is get a win, get it really quick, because that little win is just a little teaser of what's potentially possible on the bigger scale if you're willing to just trust a process. Cool.
Yeah. So like when you were like, okay, you were 17 and you had this big change and you just got your win. So you're like, okay, I'm 17, I'm healthy now and I want to help people. So how did you go from there to like, you went from like, you get your win. How do you keep on growing? How do you set your goals? And how are you like, I want to help people and I got to set some, I don't know, business goal, personal goals, all that.
Yeah.
And keep on growing and make sure you don't like go back and it's not like a roller coaster and you want to keep on like going up and up and up,
Well, I definitely am somebody that likes to perform well. Like whenever I try or I do anything, I want to do it well. Like I don't see the point of doing something and only giving it half effort. Do you know what I mean? Like this is just me. It's my personality. It's how I was raised. I had parents that were both entrepreneurs, but also professionals. One was building their own successful veterinary practice. My mom kept leveling up her education. She started as a registered nurse, but she always had a side income. Like she had an antique business at one point. She had a design business another time. Like she always had a side hustle, right? And so growing up and seeing that, it was like, wow, this is awesome. But their work ethic, sometimes overshadowed their health ethic. Okay. So their health wasn't always great and they weren't wonderful role models on a healthy lifestyle. And so I recognized that there was certain work ethic I gained, but there were certain things that I was lacking. And so recognizing the areas that I felt I wanted to improve in, like my health and well-being, my physicality, I had to just start finding other inspiration, other role models, if you will, to emulate. And a lot of that was just achieved through books that I read, because I didn't have the money or the resources to hire somebody or to work with a personal trainer. Like it just wasn't really an option. And plus I wasn't really comfortable with it. So I had to find those sources. And that's why, when people start to believe that they can change, like no matter how challenging it may be, yes, change is going to happen whether we like it or not, but we can be somewhat of a proactive element in our change. Do you know what I mean? Like we can, like if I didn't go to the gym and I didn't change how I eat, I'd still be that obese kid. It wouldn't have changed. I had to change some things that I was doing.
Yeah.
And wasn't once, it was every day. Right. But going through that process, I developed this strong belief in myself that I can change whenever I want, and it's never easy, but the process can be fairly simplified. And so that gave me that confidence in myself that I can change. And so I became very hungry for personal and professional development. I did. I became hungry. I was like, well, I'm 17 now. I feel great. I got people that actually have seen what I've done. They've recognized it. And now they're coming to me for support to help them with it. I'm like, wow, this is great. Well, I want to keep growing as a person, as a human. And so I just dove into that development side of things, lots of books. And back then listening to tapes, like audiobooks on tapes. I'm so totally dating myself. I'm 44. So as I tell my kids, I'm older than Google, and they still don't quite get it. But the long and short of what I'm trying to say is once you recognize there's areas in your life that you want to improve, like if you take Tony Robbins as an example, his wheel of life and is referenced quite often. And I don't even think he developed it, but it really became more of the forefront because what Tony Robbins did for the personal/professional development industry was huge. He put it on the map, right? Like he made it accessible to everybody. He created an industry for us. And I've just always wanted to be a forever student of that industry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but you have to have that desire in you. And sometimes it's hard to stay motivated, right? Because if change isn't happening fast enough, or we expect it, we have these false expectations that aren't being met. And no one's, sort of coached us or helped us shift our perspective, it's easy to give up, right? It really is. It's like, this is too hard. I'm not seeing the results, so why bother? And because I know that the result's always worth the work, that's why I endure. And it's what I try to support people with, is the enduring, because there's going to be ups and downs. There always is. I mean, come on, like, you can't, it's just life. I mean, it's nothing magical. It's nothing, there's no secret sauce here. You know, it's like, it's life. It's dynamic. It's changing all the time, but you have a lot of more control than you probably give yourself credit. And so that's what I really want people to appreciate, is like, listen, and I know it sounds like really kind of airy fairy, you know, it's like that sort of out there. And, but I think it's so true. Like, it's all about how you think and how you look at things. Yeah. You know, like those two perspectives, those little shifts, it's amazing what people can accomplish. There's so much resiliency and potential in our human species, you know, and I truly believe that. And so that's why, you know, anybody comes to me and they're like, well, I want to make this change. I'm like, right on, get to work, you know, like you can do this, because I truly believe anybody can do it, you know, so. Yeah.
And about those results, like that, you know, that the result is going to be worth the hustle, worth the grind. Do you think that that's enough of a reward, or do you sometimes need to take a break or to get out of this whole positive, but yet still growing in really dynamic atmosphere to recharge?
Yeah, well, I will admit I've got a bit of a bias to optimism. Okay, but I look at some of the other biases, like confirmation bias, right? Like, there's lots of biases out there that influence how we act and some of our belief systems, et cetera, et cetera. And I've recognized that about myself. But if I'm given an option on how to look at a certain situation, I'm always going to try to look at it from an optimistic and hope-filled perspective. Because why bother the other way? You know, like, if I'm going to be defeatist, I'm going to be negative about it every step of the way, it's going to be really hard for me to sustain it. And to be honest, change will never happen. You know, it's like, I also learned this in my post-secondary education. You know, I started in the sciences because ultimately I was doing it because I thought it would make my dad proud. Right? I was like, I'll follow in his footsteps. I'll be a vet. And so I started, I remember my first year, I just hated it. I was like, I hate the sciences. I hate physics. Like, I don't want to do any of this. It doesn't get me excited. Like, I'm not passionate about this. And yet I was trying to force myself to do it because I believed that being a vet would validate my dad. You know, it would develop a deeper relationship for him and I, and he'd be proud. Like, so I was making a lot of decisions based on what I believed other people expected of me, rather than asking myself, what do I want? You know, what is actually what makes me excited, makes me feel impassioned about my life and excited to wake up every morning, you know? And so there was that bit of a realization in that first year. It was like, you know, I got to do what I want to do. And I'm the one that's fully responsible for that. So if I want to see some changes, time to make some changes. And it wasn't easy, but it was definitely worth it. And I think we sometimes just have to trust in ourselves that if we do enough of the right things at the right time for the right reasons, the right results will eventually follow. Does that make sense? Like, this, I know it's almost like an act of faith, right? But it's faith in ourselves, in our own abilities. Easy to say, not always easy to practice, but it doesn't mean it's not worth practicing. And I think a lot of people just aren't aware of the types of exercises, the types of resources that are available. I mean, a lot of us are living life with tunnel vision, right? Like, we are so, and especially the year that we've just had, right? And like with COVID and the pandemic, and I mean, we feel really boxed in because we are boxed in. And it's challenging to stay motivated, to stay excited, because it feels like all of our options have been pared down to this limited amount of choices. So we can either look at it in a defeatist mindset and be like, well, why bother? Let's just get through this and we'll figure it out after. Or we can say, rather than thinking about all the things we can't do, what if we start asking ourselves, what can I do? You know, versus looking at all the things that you can't. Like, I know I was in that mindset, man. I'll tell you, when COVID first happened, they first started locking things down. A big part of my business and income was with keynotes and doing big conferences and talks and stuff. And I saw 80% of that business gone, like gone. Like literally within about a 48-hour period of the lockdown starting to happen, it was like cancel contract, cancel contract, cancel contract. I was like, oops, and I felt pretty broken up about it. I was like, oh my goodness, I was projecting a best year since leaving my former career. Well, that's not being projected anymore, And so it's really easy to get into that fear state. And I was there. But because I've got a practice to be able to work through that and get through that, after about a week of just doing some inner work and just going through some exercises, resetting, I was able to then restart with that new mindset of, okay, well, I can't do all this stuff. I'm not going to worry about that. But now, given this new situation, what can I do? And then just lean into that. Do more of that. Don't worry about the other stuff. Just do what you can do. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be like starting a podcast. I've met so many people that have started creating regular content online because they found themselves sitting at home and they wanted something else to do. Awesome. That's great. Think about all the things that you could do now that maybe you didn't have the space to do before. And I'm seeing a lot of people popping up with new businesses, and it's awesome. I've got 3 friends that have all released books in the last 12 months. Like, awesome. Like, so there is a lot of people that are shining examples of what you can do if you just reassess your current situation and actually look at what you got, what you got to work with, and just use that, And so, yeah, that's sort of what's really helped me. And I've seen it work with some of my clients and some of the other people that I've spoken to over the last year. It's really helped them with navigating some of the challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think like it's important to always keep on like chasing changes and all that to keep growing, or maybe there's a sweet spot for everybody in the world, and you like, I don't know, maybe like you're only like 2 or 3 changes away from the sweet spot, or like it's important to always keep on chasing the like changes and all that and get out of your comfort zone. Otherwise, you're going to become like lazy and complacent. What's your take on that?
I really like that, Matt, and I think it's. What's super interesting, I sort of pose it back to another question to you, just to sort of frame this up, is when we look at lifestyle choices, like I think people have become so much more aware. It's to the point that it's a cliche now, right? We talk about the body, the mind, the spirit. We hear that all the time, right? Like all the time, body, mind, spirit, body, mind, spirit. We understand that these are 3 aspects that make up us as humans, but we're so much more than just those 3 things. But it's a great 3 buckets that we can all relate to because it's out in the mainstream. We hear about it all the time. So recognizing that, okay, we got this body, we got this mind, we got the spirit, they're all connected. We want to seek purpose in our life, because when we feel like we're living a life on purpose, it sure does feel like the obstacles are never as challenging, but it also makes what we're experiencing in the moment seem much more vibrant. I call it's like the VR life, right? Everything's in 2D up until that point when you discover what's your purpose, what's your passion, and you start leaning into that. All of a sudden, it's like virtual reality. Now it's an immersive experience. Or before that, your life might have felt like it was in 2D, And so it's like looking for those opportunities to like, whoa, holy smokes, I had no idea that this is what potentially laid in front of me. And it doesn't mean that you start with this massive change or recognize all of the faults that you think you need to now change. Like we're very quick to go to all the areas that we think we want to see improve in our life, and we just try to do it all at once. I like to boil it down to just a couple things. A lot of it's just habits. And I like to frame it around regret. And what I mean by this, let's just talk about health, because I love talking about health, because I know with entrepreneurs, when I help them with their health, I instantly help them with their businesses. Instantly, because I can help them with their businesses, but that's not going to do anything for their health, typically, unless there's a plan or a commitment to doing something for them first before the business. And so that's where I always like to lead off with health. Like, what's your healthy lifestyle habits in place? Well, I don't really have any. Okay, let's start there. And then we'll look at the business, But the big thing is this health side of things. A lot of people will ask them, hey, do you eat a lot of greens? How much of your diet's filled with plants, especially green leafy plants? There's lots of, you can't argue with the data. All right. There's a lot of science out there that talks about the benefits of having a bit more plants in our diet. Right. And I'm not going to get into the organic, non-organic, GMO stuff. I won't go there. I'm just talking about the surface level here. It's pretty general knowledge. Like we understand that that's probably a good thing to have a bit more plants in our diet. So when I think about that, if I can invite somebody to have a salad, just one nice big salad with maybe some cedar plank salmon or some lean animal protein on it, but something that you're really proud of. You look at that and it's like, whoa, this is gonna be great. You know, like when you get one of those big salads and you're just like, oh man, I can't wait to eat this, because you know your body's gonna love it.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel good after. 2 or 3 hours later, you'll never say to somebody, you know what? I regret eating a salad at lunch today. Right? Would you ever say that? I've never heard anybody say that. None of my clients have ever said, Dai, I regret having that salad at lunch. You know, but the same goes with exercise, working out. I've never had someone say, you know what? I really regret working out today. I regret doing that yoga class. No, it's just, we don't. We know there's certain things that we do provide us with instant positive feedback, and we never regret taking the time to do it. So why not lean more into that and ask ourselves, well, will I regret doing this, or will I regret not doing it? And if you start to recognize more of the things that you know you'll never regret doing, that's probably a good thing to do. And so it's really starting to understand that. It's like, well, I know if I don't work out and I don't work out consistently, it's going to affect my health, but I also feel this negative energy, this negative opinion of myself, this negative, like, oh, guilt, shame, blame. I mean, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not saying there should be guilt associated with that. If there's guilt there, there's something else at work. You know, and that's a deeper conversation, but, you know, just do it. And as I often say to people, you know, I'm always one workout away from feeling better. I've never had a workout and been afterwards saying, I don't feel better than I did before I started. Like, it's just never happened. Right? I know I'm one workout away from feeling better, from feeling less stressed, you know, less anxious. Like, so when we know this, we know there's certain things that we can always go to when we need that instant pick me up to get us reset and refocused and restarted. Those are what you want in your back pocket, you know? And for everybody, it's a little bit different. You know, it's a little bit different. But for me, it's fitness, my nutrition, also what I'm feeding my mind with. And so this is sort of like closing the loop on your initial question, Matt. You were asking about the personal development and the professional development, that journey. Well, for me, listening to positive things, like a positive podcast, like your guys' podcast, right? Like listening to that feeds my mind with positive messages, positive ideas. You know, I'm not going to go and watch a horror movie. Now, occasionally I do. So that's when I'm checking out and I just want entertainment, something I don't have to think about. But if that was my regular everyday go-to main thing I put in my mind, of course, my perspective is going to change and going to lean more into that. So ask ourselves, who is feeding my mind and how am I feeding my mind? And also association, who do you hang out with? Jim Rohn talked about, you know, we're the net sum of our 5 closest relationships, you know, outside of the home. And also whatever we're listening to, whatever we're watching, it does influence us. So if you want to see subtle changes, I look at people, they just start listening to positive podcasts and I'll meet them 3 or 4 months later and they're like a different person, you know, because you can't unlearn what you learn. You can be ignorant. You can choose not to do any of the great things that you've now learned, but that's a different conversation. You know, like there comes a point where all of a sudden you're just like, yeah, I know what to do. So you either do it or you don't. And if you're not, I'm not here to guilt you into doing it. But if it makes you feel bad, I'd like to know, well, why do you continue not to do it? If you know it's going to make you feel this way, what's going on? You know, and that's like another whole conversation. But does that make sense? Like, is this all like,
I
connecting the dots, right?
It's a great way to put it. You have like a toolbox with like everything that makes you feel better. Like, whether it's a salad, a workout, podcasts, all that, and whatever you get, like you feed yourself is how you're going to become and all that. Yeah, for sure. It totally makes sense. I think Leo has a question.
I really do. I've been like taking this in, and I just thought about we spoke about motivation and inspiration. How do you or what's a way that we can all just kind of draw inspiration from the things around us instead of always looking within? Because I find myself kind of relying on myself to motivate myself, and that's just too much of me. But how you spoke about those positive podcasts and things like that. But outside of that, And outside of mentoring, do you think that we can draw positive energy from just the dynamism of everyday life, or something?
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces there that we could easily speak to, and you know, when you think about motivation and inspiration, like I always look at motivation, it's like the word motive, right? Like, what is a motive? A motive is usually a reason why somebody does something. You know, we often hear about motives referred to in court cases, right? Like, what was their motive for breaking that law, for doing that thing that we want to punish them for, right? There was a motive, there was a reason. And so I always think that's usually something that's outside of ourselves. There's always connected to an intrinsic motivator, right? But there's usually something outside of us that is driving us, or there's a goal that we're looking to achieve. Where inspiration is a little bit different. I find that that's something that definitely comes from within. And harnessing the two, it's not always easy, especially if we are someone that's been in a place where we feel like we're losing all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, every time I try to do something, it's like, oh, I just keep losing. So why am I even playing anymore? You know? And it's important to remember that, well, maybe we just need to change how we're doing things. So the outcomes are adjusted. And I'm not here to say downgrade your dreams. Okay. Because I've had some people say, well, it sounds like you want me just to reduce my dreams, reduce my vision. You want me to boil it down to something easier. I'm like, well, no, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, what is the first thing that you could be doing right now that's not going to require a lot of effort, but it's more than you're doing now, but it's going to start to move you towards that vision.
Yeah.
Because just getting started, you know, inertia, right? Like we start talking, and I told you I don't really like physics, but I always remember some of the lessons of physics, right? And to get something that's not moving, it always takes the most amount of energy at that initial point in time to get that thing started. But once it gets started, gravity kicks in, right? And or in some cases, lack of gravity kicks in, and it just takes off. And so what can we do to generate enough energy just to get us started? I find that that's the key piece, that if people can just worry about the smallest, littlest step to take first, it is sometimes also the biggest step. Like, and I know it sounds weird saying that. Let me just give you an understanding to this. You know, pull-ups, right? Chin-ups, pull-ups. Well, it's challenging movement for a lot of people. I've coached a lot of people, and one of their physical goals that we set is to be able to do one pull-up, because they can't do any, and they've never been able to do one in their life. And they're like, I'd love to be able to do one. And I'm like, and they're like, so how many should I be hoping to do? And I'm like, one. I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to get you set so you can do one pull-up. And like, just one? I'm like, yeah, one. And they're like, why just one? I'm like, because it's 100% improvement. And it's the only time in your life that you'll have 100% improvement in that movement. The only time, right? Because it's 0 to 1 is always the hardest. After that, it's diminishing returns. You know, it's like, it'll never be the same kind of growth that you achieve on that very first movement. And I want people to understand that. Like, the smallest a step forward is still a step forward. And that's all you got to do. You just got to get started. And so, you know, I like the pull-up analogy, because people always get that. They're like, oh yeah, I get that. Because most people have at least tried one at some point in time. And I have guys that I coach are like, yeah, I could do pull-ups when I was 18. You know, it's like over 20 years later. And they're like, there's no way I can do that again. I'm like, yes, you can. We've done it before. We'll get it again. But that 0 to 1 is a big deal. Big deal. And it's worth celebrating. You know, it really is. As soon as you achieve that milestone, it's like, whoa, this is how it starts. And then it's just trusting, doing that little bit every day. And it's amazing what happens. I've had people say, I just started that. I boiled it down to the simplest little of steps, and I just started doing that every day. Like, some people, it's just drinking 2 liters of water a day. Like, literally just getting enough water every day. And for them, they struggled. You know, water came in the form of a coffee, came in pops or sodas, you know, alcohol. So to them, it was like, I drink lots of liquids. I'm like, no, just water. You know, put some lemon in there if you need some flavoring, but just water. 2 liters a day. Can you do that? You know, and it's like, whoa, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, just, okay, that's goal 1, is just do that. After a week, they start feeling better. Their body's feeling better. They're detoxing. They're actually hydrated. They're not dehydrated anymore. You know, like it's just wild how the smallest of things can make a massive impact, but you have to compound it over time. So yeah, that's how I answer that one.
Okay. In terms of like maybe a little bit more details into that, but my question is more in setting goals. Like, what if you have like, how do you manage expectations when you have like a very big goal? Let's say like you have somebody come up to you and they're like, I want to become a billionaire. All right. Do you say like, maybe you got to become like a millionaire first, or you're like, I want to visit another planet. Well, maybe get yourself a spaceship first, you know? So it's important to like, just maybe not burn the steps, or like when you have like something that's really not achievable at the moment, do you think it's important to like put it aside, or just like get a better plan? What do you think?
Well, if you get $50 million, you can get a seat on SpaceX. But yeah, you know, what I found is really important with goal setting, depending on what it is. Like I almost prefer the term life setting. You know, it's like, well, what are the results you want to start producing in your life? Because if it's always tied to a monetary goal, this quantification, it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the feeling. And that's where that why element, the reason why we want $1 million or $1 billion. Like, why? Like, what is the vision here? It's like, if it's just an arbitrary number, to be honest, it's pretty hard to stay excited about that because it's just a number.
Yeah.
It is just a number. We give the number meaning. It's sort of like right back to like the meaning of life idea, right? It's like meaning of life is whatever I determine it to mean for me. And there's no right or wrong. It's my perspective. It's my belief. It's my meaning to my life, right? But when we talk about these external goals, like $1 billion, it's like, okay, well, great. What is that $1 billion going to look like for you? What is life going to look like when you have $1 billion? I really want to understand why you've picked this arbitrary number out. Because for me to help break that down, to actually create a plan, I got to have the understanding of what's motivating the goal. You know, like what's the connection to that? Because you're right, $1 million, $10 million, $100 million, like if it's just a number, why $1 billion? You know, like there's always a reason why that number's popped up for somebody. And if they start telling me, well, it's because I want to change the world, I want to do this, I want to do that. Awesome. Well, let me ask you this. How can you start to influence some of those changes you want to see without $1 billion? Oh,
that's a way better question.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I never really thought about that, you know? And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's think about that. You know, like what can you start doing now to make those changes start to happen without $1 billion? Because then when you get to $1 billion, you've already got some systems in place and you already got some ideas and you've already been able to do some testing to see what works. But, you know, there's a lot of things to unpack there. But I think the biggest issue is a lot, and I'm just speaking from my own personal experience here, as well as people that I've worked with. Like when it comes to goal setting, we often are very quick to quantify. Like the fitness industry, like I have a love-hate relationship with it. Okay. And I am a little bit outspoken about this, but it's because I think we need to change the way we look at goal setting in fitness, you know, because fitness is very much about the weight on the scale, the dress size, how much weight you can move on the bar. You know, like we put all these metrics in place to measure things and we gauge progress based on those numbers. But we don't really spend a lot of time saying, hey, how is this going to affect your life and the life of your family and friends and communities, your business? Like really think about the outcomes as it relates to everything outside of the gym, right? And so if we spend more time in the goal setting side of things, to really qualify and sure quantify so we can maintain the SMART goals, you know, so we can be specific, measure it, all that. I get it. That's still important. But it's the other piece I want us to lean into a lot more, spend more time on the qualifying. Because if you have an emotional connection to the goal, it's not just an arbitrary number now. It is a vision. It is part of your purpose, you know, and you're going to get there no matter what. And I don't think the money is really the motivation. It's actually because you want to see change happen in the world. You know, you want to see this other result and you just feel that the money is how you're going to provide that result. And more often than not, I find that it's not money that's going to provide the result. It's actually just doing certain things, aligning certain people, changing certain habits. And so that's why when people come to me and say, well, this is my money goal. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. But Why that? Like, I don't get it. Like, I just hear so many, and trust me, I was like this in my 20s and my early 30s, especially when I was running my other business. Like, a lot of my choices and the way I looked at success was quantified with money and possessions and assets. And, like, it was super quick because it's what I believed everybody was talking about when they talked about the hustle. And, you can't help but see the Ty Lopez funnels and you go down those and it's like, I want that. Oh, cool. What a life, but that's what I believed. I thought that was what you were supposed to be doing. And then I never felt fulfilled though. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't, I just like, and so it's not a money thing. It's a purpose thing. It's like a fulfillment thing. It's a happiness and joy thing, like feeling connected to that goal and seeing how it's going to reverberate out to everybody else. That is a way better place to work from. It's a lot easier to stay motivated and inspired when we have that emotional connection to the things that we're doing every day. And because you're going to have up and down days, and chances are probably more down days than up days. I'm just being real here. I'm just being real. Take what you want. I know I try to, be biased to optimism, but I do want to be a bit of a pragmatic at times. There are going to be lots of down days. And it's just, how do you navigate the down days? How do you stay focused? How do you stay committed? How do you just acknowledge, okay, yeah, I'm having a down day. Here's a couple things I can do. It doesn't diminish my desire to achieve the goal. It's just, I'm having a down day. It's okay. Here's what I'm going to do. So when I get back up tomorrow and I am back up, boom, I'm right back at it again, So it's learning how to navigate the downs, I think, is what we don't spend enough time doing.
Yeah.
And speaking of these goals, to stay in this idea, I adore the idea of setting realistic goals so you can achieve them, feel good about yourself, and stay in that momentum. But what about unrealistic goals? Like really big picture things that we want sometimes, that give us direction. Do you think that alone is let's say direction enough, or enough for someone to stay motivated? Or do you believe that breaking it down into those smaller goals that we talked about is the best or the most efficient way?
Well, to be honest, I think both sides of the coin are important. I think they both have tremendous value and serve a purpose. Let's just put it that way. And because if you think about big, lofty goals, right, those big dreams, those big visions, like, I'm all for casting a big vision, casting a wide net, so to speak. I always love the quote, it's like, shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll still be, whatever, soaring in the stars or something like that. I always love that idea. It's like, because if I do have a big lofty goal and I get halfway there, do you think I'm going to be happy? Yeah, I'm going to be happy because I saw all this progress. I'm halfway to that goal. And especially if it say it's a money thing, you think the guy that says, I want to have $1 billion. And after a few years, he's at 500 million. He's like, oh, I haven't hit my goal yet. It's like, dude, you got 500 million, like, give your head a shake, right? It's like, you're seeing the results. Why are you seeing the results? Because you're seeing the small incremental changes. You're aware of it. You're mindful of it. So I think it is important. It's like going on a road trip. You might have a 12-hour journey ahead of you. Well, you can stay in that car for that entire 12 hours and just go at it one straight go. You might have to stop, fill up some gas a couple times, but either way, it's like, are you going to take in the scenery? Are you going to make some stops along the way? Are you going to really make it a fun adventure? Well, that's going to involve little pit stops along the way, milestone moments that you can celebrate and acknowledge and recognize, what? We got to this first milestone because of the work that we've done leading up to this. A lot of the times, those habits that we've just created for ourselves, that we followed those steps, brought us to that first goal, that first mini milestone. Like, I'm just using the sort of it's that first city, 2 hours on our journey. It's that first pit stop, right? Well, let's celebrate. We got here. We're now only got 10 hours left to go. This is awesome. What worked really well in getting us to that first milestone? What habits were really beneficial? Oh yeah, well, we made sure the GPS, we made sure we had a full tank of gas, we made sure the tires weren't flat. Like, there's certain things you can do to set yourself up so you're ready to take on the challenge. And so breaking things down, yeah. Is it important? For sure. Having a big lofty goal, is it important? I think so. Because like I said, we all have immense potential. And I think most of us are used to shooting our sights lower. Right? You earlier, you said, this idea of expectations.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of us are so used to the down days. We're so used to not getting what we believe we want and not achieving certain goals, or we achieve the goals and then all of a sudden we lose them again, right? And so there's that limiting belief system inside of us that we're fighting against. And I like people to overshoot their potential, for sure. You know, why not? Like, why limit yourself before you even tried? Right? And so there's a lot of things to unpack there. I know that, and I'm not trying to be too vague, but to answer your question as bluntly as I can, yeah, having small little goals or breaking it down into small little milestone moments that you can celebrate and be aware of and recognize the patterns that are working versus the patterns that aren't, that's a really good idea. But it's nice to have an overarching bigger goal that is your North Star, as I say. You know, like if we use the navigation principle, that North Star in the sky, it's great. It's way out there. Can we reach that star? Well, no, not right now. I mean, it's light years away, but it's there and it guides us in the right direction. So what is your North Star? What is that big goal that is, you're going to always be adjusting the direction you're going based on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Man, I think we can cut it here and time for sure. Man, like I learned so much. I think I gotta change all my goals right now, but yeah. Hopefully, like people learned a lot too. Yeah, so it's promo time for you. Whatever you got going on in your life, please share that. Where can people find out more about you and learn more and all about that? So it's your time.
Well, thank you, Matt and Leo. First of all, I feel really privileged to have had this opportunity to connect with you guys. And I absolutely love what you're creating in the world and how you're making an impact for so many people. And just to be part of that journey, thank you. And as far as what's coming up, you know, I'm a really easy guy to get a hold of once you understand how to spell my name. You know, Dai, D-A-I, is a Welsh name for David. So D-A-I, and then Manuel, M-A-N-U-E-L, is my last name. It's a Portuguese last name. So yes, I'm a mix. And as I say to everybody, don't worry about it. I'm Canadian. Okay. That's just the normal thing here. We're mixes of everything here. And so DaiManuel.com is my main website. Over 1,500 articles there that I've published over the decade, and lots of great resources and free tools. And just, I always tell people, if you're looking for some, a little bit of inspiration, motivation, and a little bit of guidance, fill your boots there. There's a lot, you know, and on lots of subject matters. But if you want to have a conversation, Facebook or Instagram is really easy to get a hold of me. Just shoot me a DM on either platform. And I'm the guy that always replies. So just give me a little bit of heads up there. Like I always tell people, usually I'll get back within a day or two. And, but that's the easiest way to just have a conversation. You can say, hey, I heard you talking to Matt and Leo. I love this. This is my big goal. And this is how I'm breaking it down. I'd love to hear that. It's a great way to have us a nice introductory conversation, you know? And as far as a promo goes, well, I've got my upcoming TEDx talk end of March. And it will be speaking a lot about, I do a lot of men's work. I run some groups. There's no cost. They're free to attend, but they're just for men. And it's called Mentorship Mondays. So we meet on Mondays. We have a UK group. We have an East Coast group, a West Coast group, and we still have a group that I started in Bali, still running. And if there's any guys that are listening to this and they want more mentorship in their life, connect with with great men, reach out. It's what my TEDx talk will be about too. So definitely keep posted on that. And other than that, man, that's it. That's all I got.